God, my hair is bad. I've got to get a haircut.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a question that I've often asked myself. Where is the information stored? We can tune into data ether sort of mentally. People can, can't they?
I
Uh,
think so.
well, this is how you can remote view, etc. Um,
Well, yeah, that would be an excellent example of the possibility of, the signals going out and, being, because if it was a true electromagnetic signal, it would only have a certain distance of propagation. So there's got to be some other tunneling, quantum
yes,
tunneling aspect, something happening that is connecting you to long range distance. And also, I have at times been able to feel the stock market, and I don't know if I'm feeling the traders and the market makers. Unfortunately, sometimes that means that I make I believe something positive and it turns out to be something negative, but I feel something is about to happen. So there's some kind of underlying connection, and that's part of what I'm interested in with these
I
data
think
lake.
I think if you follow the concept complex system for quite a very closely and concentrate on it for quite a number of hours or days
I,
or months, you can get a natural feel for it that you can't actually explain. And it's the same with improving your talents as a huntsman, a marksman, a fighter, or whatever you want.
oh,
Because you're actually focused on that issue, you will be able to get more intuition than not a person.
I could buy that. So an example, I've been playing Ghost Recon Wildlands, and yesterday, just out of nowhere, suddenly I got good. And I don't know. I mean, I've played many type of. I played Metal Gear Solid, and I've played Splinter Cell. I've played all these other games in the similar genre, and I played Grand Theft Auto, which the game is arguably more like Grand Theft Auto than it is like a Splinter Cell or one of those kind of Tom Clancy games. But suddenly, I was able to drive the motorcycle well and fly well, and I was in a different state almost.
Yeah,
And I can sort of buy what you're selling there. So how do you think then? First of all, you work in these like computational spaces. Aaron works in these computational spaces. How do you think that we should go about modeling numbers and data science using gaseous and plasma physics? Number one. Number two, how do we actually prove whether or not these data ley lines, if they exist, are Birkeland currents, are counter rotating vortices?
well, I think we've got to look at other people's attitudes towards these flows of information through 3D space. And of course, Rupert Sheldrake is an expert in this field. The only other people who look at this area are those who believe in the holographic universe and that what we see is an illusion. And uh, I don't agree with them, but there are some. They do have some fascinating logic behind their proposals, and it's very worthwhile studying Hoffman, for example. Um, this is where basically uh, our material experience is removed from our spiritual experience somehow. It's um, we almost live in a computer world, a kind of a generated world, and you can look at it, you can look at everything that happens as being generated, and probably by the human mind in that sort of idea, in that idea. But I would like to keep it to a 3D world with time happening as
Well,
we know it. Um,
I mean, the thing is, as I made the point before, you can imagine anything, and until empirical evidence and some experiment collapses it down and disproves that it can't be true, you can get away with it. That doesn't mean it's a good idea necessarily for us to model something that's as important as data ether. as some kind of nth dimensional or 11th dimensional space, it's probably much better for us to stick to 3 and 4 dimensions if you want to include time as a dimension. I don't think of it as a dimension, but people do. And then in such a case, running these simulations would be, well, there was a request on academia for papers for the Operations Research Journal. And so I submitted several NIMS papers and also one medical one. I didn't know how far their journal went in terms of looking at different kinds of statistics. But the Data Ether one puts out a proposal that data scientists actually try this out. And I'm interested to see if I get a response. So far, nothing. But, it's been the weekend. So, Aaron, what do you think about the Data Ether or the proposal to compute and treat it as a gaseous physics?
I think it's imperative that we build some kind of experiment or something to test it out. I doubt like a random number generator or something would satisfy the test, but when you consider that the Earth is part of the solar system circuit, which is part of the universe circuit, or the galaxy circuit and the universe circuit, and so on and so on. Like filaments just breaking down to more filaments, roots breaking down into your micro roots and your fungi and all of that other kind of stuff, like the communication sector that goes on in the biological realm. Everything ends up being modeled after your electrical phenomena, plasma phenomena as well. So it only makes sense in my mind that numbers would derive to plasma, which really hints towards the mathematics that I have been playing with recently, because you remember that ion engine that I've been working on,
right?
And the reactor and everything.
But the audience doesn't know what you're talking about, so you're going to have to explain to the audience kind of what you mean.
So I've been working on a plasma engine, or an ion engine. Obviously, you use plasma to make ions in this sense, but the Hall effect model and everything else that's used to predict the thrust of existing engines, they don't work for this specific engine. And so I've been having to rethink all of the different moving variables and the way that the math works into the situation, essentially inventing a new type of math, because it's like algebra is algebra like raised to the algebra, or sorry, calculus is algebra raised to the algebra, whereas algebra itself is just like basic addition and subtraction raised to the addition and subtraction. And so the model that I've been working with as far as the mathematics goes, like calculus raised to the calculus. So because there's so many different numbers and problems and everything that has to be addressed in order to determine the thrust, because in the model that I'm working with right now, it gets down to the material science, not just the thrust and the fuel and the electrical potential and stuff like that. I have to go all the way down to the physical properties of the material and bring that into the math in order to try and figure out what a theoretical limit would be on the thrust or the output. And whenever I'm thinking about those kinds of things, and the plasma of the numbers, it seems to make more sense that numbers at their core would represent that kind of plasma thinking. That if we were to take that same model that I'm building for the plasma engine, then it could theoretically be used to compute the uncountables in the universe, being the number of stars, the number of grains of sand, the number of uh, atoms in a planet. I mean, based off of the macro phenomena that's happening, you can use that. And if everything seems to be following this plasma model, this of the electrical circuits, so to speak, um, it's like the numbers that exist in our head are really nothing more than the ones and zeros, the equivalent of binary in a computer. So it's like our numbers, like as we perceive our numbers, is really just a fraction of the problem, and that's why calculus raised to the calculus ends up being numbers as it truly exists, because the numbers are in a constant state of flux.
Okay. So what's your plans to do the simulations? Are you going to use MATLAB or something, or what are you proposing to do?
As it is right now, I've got that cluster computer that I'm building out, and then I've got
don't know about that either.
I've got that that crypto chain, Eulium. So I'm going to ideally.
People don't know about that either, so go ahead and do a plug for that. And that reminds me, I gotta log in and create a thing.
Yeah.
I just got an email, just so you guys know. Lee Pennington from the AKHA wants me to start the regular AKHA meetings in January. That's funny. Okay, anyways, go ahead.
So Eulium. Yeah, put them in the laundry. That's fine. I got two little ones dying for my attention. Okay, so Eulium is like yes, jump off of the rice, please. So Eulium is a financial tool, if you will, for research. So one of the things that I found out very early in life and my career and everything else is there seems to never be enough money for researchers, for doing the research that actually matters. There's always like, what's the monetary upside of it? Like, what is this going to profit in the grand scheme of things? And so when I designed Eulium, it was around the mentality of people that are doing research that is important to other people. That is valuable. And so someone that's providing the proper research, like let's say into a rare genetic disease as an example, there may not ever be a way for that rare genetic disease, like the treatment options and stuff, to produce a profit. But that doesn't mean that we don't need to cure the disease. It doesn't mean that we don't need to actually put money into the research. And so Eulium is a way for labs to get funding for their research by using the cryptocurrency. And so a lab, I expect nonprofits to move over to this model because it just works. The lab is able to create a staking pool to where they are interacting with their audience, the people who are passionate about what it is that they're doing. It'll more than likely start with friends and family, like it always does, but they'll be able to create this staking pool and then send updates and notifications and post data and stuff like that to that pool. And then the coin holders can stake the coins on the project, which will generate a mutual APR. The APR will pay the coin holder back for the instant gratification. So they're going to be able to beat inflation of your fiat currencies just by putting the money to work. And then the research project is funded by a portion of that APR. Initially, everything is just 50-50, so the coin holder gets 50% of the APR. The scientist and the research project gets 50% of the APR. So that means you, instead of donating your money and gifting it to this organization and hoping they do with it what you want them to do with it, it means that capital, that money is staked against the project. And if you ever have like a life event and you have to pull your money out and put it someplace else, or you don't like the way the research is going, or what have you, or the research just goes dark, or they find out they can't do what they thought they were going to be able to do, then the stakers are able to just pull their money out and put it into a different pool, a different fund, for to support a different scientist. It also means the how do you say, the intellectual property and everything has a proper chain of custody. So if a researcher develops this absolutely amazing diagnostic test, then when that diagnostic test goes to market, the portion ownership of the staking pool when that test was created, that becomes your royalties. And so that diagnostic test gets sold or manufactured by this company, the coin holders and the researcher get royalties for every single one of those tests that's produced. So it may be 25 cents is the prearranged agreement. So 25 cents goes to this group of people for every test. And then that gets distributed out proportionally to the biggest backers, the research lab itself. So it's becomes a user-owned pharmaceuticals, user-owned healthcare, diagnostics, user-owned science research. You're not relying on these large government programs or these large grants or these large corporations to do the research that really matters. And so I guess that's the plug.
All right, now connect that back to what you're going to do computational.
So going back to the computational, you can imagine all of the miners, all of the researchers, all of the nodes that's running this network. The coin itself is a utility. So that means it represents some amount of computational power. And so while I'll create the pool to ideally cover a lot of my expenses when it comes to doing this kind of research, I'll also be able to rent, if you will, the computational power of the chain. And so you have 100,000 nodes around the world, as an example. That's 100,000 minimum of like one CPU. And I think like 2 gigabytes of RAM or something of that nature. And so you take that and multiply it by 100,000, and you now have one of the most powerful computers, like supercomputers, to run these calculations, these computations. And that's the kind of resources that will be available here shortly to anyone that's doing research on the Eulium platform. You'll have the ability to pool those resources, to trade the Eulium for computational power.
So in effect, would you be that would be a sort of virtual private network within the cloud, I suppose. That would how that would equate.
It's better than that because the cloud is owned by someone, right? So the cloud is either owned by Google or Microsoft or AWS, Amazon, the clouds are usually owned by someone. So I've got my own private cloud here at my house. But the thing about the decentralization is it's completely decentralized. So your data, your research, and everything is completely autonomous and decentralized, and like no one else can put the pieces together besides you. Whereas if you look at the terms and conditions of all of those server farms, then they actually own all of the data and the intellectual property and everything. So if they wanted, like all of these different companies around the world that's hosted on Amazon, essentially, they're owned by Amazon. So
Yeah.
you can take, they can lock you out of your server, and I've had this happen. They can lock you out of your server and completely delete everything and say, hey, you haven't paid your bill. We're going to nuke your server in like 30 days if you don't pay us X amount of dollars. Thankfully, we had lots of backups, and there's lots of other options, but still, I don't know if they nuked it or if they took ownership or what, but Ramon can kind of vouch. It took some time to get things back up and going, because I think we were hosting one of his projects as well, and it's just really interesting because, like, out of the blues, like, you've got 30 days, and then all of a sudden, like, they change their minds, like, nope, you're gone. Like, it's like almost overnight, but they have the ability to do that. They also own everything, so if you were to take something to market, then they're going to come to you and make an offer to buy your business. But that offer is usually somewhat mafia-like mentality of like, we're going to pay you this much money, not to make a loud ruckus about this, but we own you now.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, no, I don't think you do. It's like, okay, nuked. You're
Yeah.
gone.
All right, so now connect what you were talking about with the ion drive calculations and the crypto back to modeling data ether using gaseous physics.
So when that's actually one of the biggest money makers for your quantum computers. So quantum computers has always been one of those 30-year technologies. We'll have it in 30 years, and then 30 years rolls around, we'll have it in another 30 years. The same thing happened with, for instance, the tokamak, the stellarator, a lot of your plasma or fusion reactors and stuff of that nature. The technology just seems to always be 5, 10, 30 years into the future.
Conveniently.
Yeah.
This is why, like, I know we can get to, if there were no impedances and humanity worked together and there wasn't any bureaucracy in the way and no politics involved, we could get to Mars and build a city and terraform the planet within the next few hundred years. But that's not the issue. The issue is all the BS that keeps us from being successful, and they don't get out of the way, which is something I intend talking.
So an easy example to this is NASA. So NASA was this absolutely amazing organization.
Yes.
They were leaps and bounds. Like their development pipeline went from nothing to everything almost overnight. And we're seeing an emulation of that at SpaceX right now. But that's kind of an example of your corporate being a better MEMS than your government. The government, they quickly found out, like, okay, well, I'm going to make myself obsolete if I continue developing as quickly as I am. and so they always trail back and pull back their capabilities because they are essentially working themselves out of a job in their mind. I mean, in reality, they finish this project, they get to go to the next project. If they do it well, they get to go to the next one and the next one, and they build their career off of the previous successes. But in their minds, they think, if I finish this, then what are we going to do after the Mars rover? Are we going to continue sending rovers? Because I'm a rover engineer. I'm a rover robotics specialist or whatever. And they identify with the problem at hand. But that's the same thing that's happening with your quantum computers and the stellarators and the tokamaks and everything. Is they start making great progress. They make enough progress to get the investors and things in, and then they slow down. They stop making progress because it's not in their job security to finish the project. But the quantum computer, going back to the topic at hand, the quantum computer is getting most of its funding by claiming that it can calculate the incalculable, being the number of stars, the number of like being able to
how much stock do you put in what they're claiming, either Google or China? How much do you believe them?
Say again, the claims about the quantum supremacy and such.
Yeah, from Google or Microsoft or China.
No, so this is one of those arms races. The only viable excuse for why the moon landing could have been a hoax, being we wanted to beat Russia to it. And so we, like, that's the only reason in my mind that we would have even staged it. But in reality, I know we didn't, because I've shined a laser at the reflecting panels and gotten the signal back and everything else. So I know for a fact that we've been there. Looked, saw the flag with the telescope. But the arms race is still there, and so we have to continue claiming to be ahead, like they have to continue claiming to be ahead. There's also a financial aspect to it. So if quantum computers came around with any kind of reliability, then your blockchains and your bitcoins and everything would be severely impacted. Because blockchain, specifically the proof of work algorithm, relies on computational power. Proof of stake relies on the size of the wallet, and so that's where the staking pools make money. Is you're putting your capital in the staking pool, and the staking pool will get more and more of the mining rewards based off of the size of the wallet. Proof of work is your machine will get more and more portion of the block reward, the mining reward, based off of your contribution to the overall mining capabilities. So if you're offering 1 terahash and everyone else is offering petahashes, then you're going to get a fractional percentage of that block, assuming you're in the pool that completes the problem. So if quantum computers came around, then one well-programmed quantum computer would outperform all of the silicon-based computational power of the planet. So gets you can see where that would a quantum computer would be able to outperform when it comes to the mining output. I don't think they would be able to completely destroy it, because it would take the entire computational power of the planet 100 trillion years to be able to rewrite the blockchain like as it is right now. So they wouldn't be able to go back and change the Merkle block or anything of that nature. But they would be able to essentially demonetize all of the other miners that exist and create a centralized power. So yes, I think there is indirect financial benefits to claiming that we're further along than what we actually are.
Sorry to derail a second. I hit the create wallet button and it came up with a bunch of brackets instead of, I feel like originally it looked different.
Yes,
what
you can
was
copy and paste all of that data into like your encryption. You don't use Keeper. You use
Bitwarden, but I can edit. Yeah, that's on. Which part of it did you need? You just needed the address.
I just need the public address, which is
the last long one. Okay.
Yeah, it's within the quotes.
Sure. So bring it back to modeling. Well, I mean, Nick's got a project that's going to need a lot of computational power too. And then now Robert's talking about, I don't know if he'll ever do it, but he's talking about, creating nth dimensional geometries. Bring it all back, the computational aspect, and I don't know, maybe add in the edge computing or something like that, and bring it home to the audience.
Okay. So
we're talking about the data.
Right now, if you want access to a supercomputer, you either have to build it yourself, which is your clusters,
Right.
or you have to be a part of a university or go and apply to use those resources or pay for them. There's some places that you can pay for them, but having a platform that's completely decentralized to where you can get access to a lot of those tools, like from the very beginning, or you can build additional capabilities like layer 2, layer 3 on the chain. That's not been done before, to the best of my knowledge, and so that's where we're going to be utilizing these models to raise calculus to the calculus, because it's more than I can do with my Texas Instrument. It's more than I can do.
Won't it first, though, using the blockchain, won't that slow the process down? Or are you proposing to that we'll split the computing up, distribute the computation, and then it'll come back? I mean, because right now it's mostly transactional. And I thought you're doing proof of stake on Eulium. So how do we utilize the power of the blockchain in order to do all this extra computation?
The computational power of the chain and everything is definitely it's there. It's to maintain it. The nodes creates the stability and the security of the chain. So having more nodes is always better than having fewer nodes. It's proof of stake in that we don't require a lot of we don't require a room full of GPUs or anything of that nature. You can essentially mine Eulium just as efficiently with a Raspberry Pi as you can with a supercomputer, like with 4 graphics cards or whatever. So we don't rely on that sheer computational power and the energy demand and everything of that. But where it ends up coming out ahead is you have all of these nodes. It's very lightweight, and so the number of commits, the number of blocks, and everything else that can be scaled up or scaled back, dependingly on the demand. The rewards isn't block based, so it's based off of a 24-hour period. So you get a reward based off of your staking pool, but you also get a reward for your node being online for 24 hours. And every 24 hours that it's online, you will get a piece of the of that second tier reward. And so that creates access to computational power for reliable amounts of time. The computer that's being used to maintain this, then the computational power that's on that machine is idle for the most part. It's not using the full bandwidth there. And so that's where your edge computing and stuff like that comes in. So
we'll tell people what edge computing is. I don't think most people, I think some people know about distributed computing because they've had SETI. I used to have SETI. But a lot of people don't know what edge computing is.
I don't know what edge computing is. No, I don't. Never heard of it.
Okay, so if you imagine the dinner plate, like just a regular dinner plate being your infrastructure, then you are on the outside edge of that dinner plate, hence the edge. And you've got several towers and satellites and everything else that goes like from you to the center of that that dinner plate, the center being the server in which you're trying to access. And so that's obviously three-dimensional, but we're representing it in a two-dimensional plane because you've got multiple servers that you end up connecting to at any given point. And so it gets really messy. But if you take and you fill the edge with people trying to connect to that centralized server, then what happens is the bandwidth, the pipeline of access to that centralized point gets clogged. You have too many people trying to access that one server, and that's where your DDoS attacks and stuff like that end up coming in to your server farms, to where you query as many people as possible to a server, and it overloads the server, and the server just shuts down. So it has its fail safes and everything. Edge computing is while you can have a centralized server for some things, or decentralized networks of servers, there's still benefits to that. If we have supercomputers and stuff like that, then having them kind of meshed out is so we do have quantum computers, let's say, then being able to access those quantum computers, because it's not going to be in your pocket initially, would be advantageous. But you don't necessarily need to contact the central computer for everything, the servers for everything. And that's where your Web 3.0 is coming in, is the HTTP is being replaced with things like IPFS, which is an interplanetary planetary file system. So if I need something off of, like if Ramon wants to send me a cat video, then he's going to send me the cat video just directly. And so you've got like your Wi-Fi direct, your things of that nature, to where he can just send it to me directly. And that's where the IPFS is coming in. It's not necessarily going to send it directly to me, but it's going to find the closest source to me, and then my phone's going to grab it from there. And so that's where the Web 3.0 is coming in. But the edge computing is, instead of having to go all the way back to that server farm to do the computations, my computations are done on the edge. And so the nodes, the equipment, your house, your home cloud, all of these different things can end up being an edge computer in the sense that it is on the edge with the people. And so now you have this scenario to where people need access to extremely rapid computational power. But usually it's, I need a lot of power and then I don't need any anymore. And that computational power can change and shift and flux as different people need different things. And it's always more efficient to use you and the 5 nodes of your neighbors versus going all the way back to a server farm, assuming that the nodes and everything are connected and they don't have to go through that centralized server farm. They're just going off of like a single tower or something.
Right, I see. Yeah, that sounds like a quite an exciting step forward in internet. That's that's the Web 3.0. That sounds interesting. So that'll be a direct HTTP connection to anyone you want, basically. We're all running an HTTP server, possibly. Is that the
so HTTP, HTTPS, and all of those are replaced with IPFS. So it's IPFS : / and then whatever you're wanting. And anyone has the ability to pin like the data, the website, or whatever to their private node and make it available. So it makes it really easy. And it's always traceable back to the source. The thought being of why it's the IPFS, the thought being if you're on Mars and it takes 20 minutes to get a communication to Earth and then 20 minutes back, that's 40 minutes to load a cat video because the cat video happens to be on a server on Earth. Or all of the data or whatever has to go through Earth. And that just doesn't work. So the IPFS is essentially, if the data is here on Mars, then instead of fetching it from Earth, it's just going to fetch it from the closest source, which happens to be a data center on Mars. But we take it a step further with the cloud computing and things, and that, the edge computing, and that everything can be done that way. So you can fetch from your neighbor's phone the file directly from your neighbor's phone, assuming they made it public for you, or you can request for computational power, and everyone's phones or computers, personal computers, home automation systems, whatever, that has spare computational power, they can get paid for lending out some of that processing power. And the way that they're getting paid is more than the energy consumption. It would always be a factor of the energy consumption. And then they end up getting your home computer is making you money while you're out grocery shopping or hiking in the woods. It just happens to have some spare computational power that other people are paying you for because they happen to be within close proximity and they need the extra space and such.
Well, that sounds great, yeah, and especially it's a good way of heating your bedroom as well. So that's an added benefit, substantial rewards in just heat.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, Aaron, what did you think about? Because I did upload the AIM meeting, but I private. What do you think about putting that out public or whatnot? I don't know what you felt about that.
Which meeting was that?
The part about the home, obviously not the whole meeting, but
I'm fine with it, honestly. I mean, I love open sourced technology and programs and stuff like that. I'm of the mentality that if someone else can do what I'm doing better than me, then they should be doing it. I mean, I would love to get some kind of credit recognition, some kind of like, hey, you inspired me to do this. Like,
that's what they call it.
Mm-hmm. But I'm of the mentality that it doesn't matter to me if someone else does it first, as long as it's not China or Russia. And as long as it exists in the world, because the kind of stuff that we end up working on, it's world changing, and so I do the same kind of thing with my my companies. I mean, there's a fine line of keeping the investors happy, but if I'm putting product out there, then I'm not going to be sending a bunch of people cease and desist orders and all of this other stuff because they happen to copy the design or something. I just, by the time someone else copies it, it's obsolete. So our job is to innovate faster than what other people can copy us.
No, I agree with that. No, I don't think that you and I will have a problem with that. Just wanted to make sure. That's why I kept it private, because I didn't know your thoughts on that. So I'll let the John Q public, our pithy group of followers, take a look at what we were talking about in AIM. Right. So swing it back to Nick and your project. How could the data ether or data ley lines touch what you're trying to do, or what we're trying to do? Because we have kind of a tandem mutual interest in this project of modeling the solar system and the solar system electric circuit. I mean, maybe it'll be helpful if we have if we can do data ether and operate on a level that he's talking about with serious computational requisites. Maybe we would finally have enough power to compute these electric circuit changes in an analog fashion, not only in a digital, numeric, like here's a scalar number and here's a scalar number and it goes up and down, but actually talking about the actual connection.
Yeah. Well,
the Earth alone, how many electric belts are there on the Earth? Do you remember? There's more than the Van Allen belts. A lot of people don't know even about the Van Allen belts, but there's a lot more than the Van Allen belts.
I've no idea. No, I've no idea about that one. But I have something to add. Anyway, there's this guy William, PhD, called William Tiller, and he was I think he was at Stanford. I think he was a physics emeritus professor at Stanford, and he got quite into subtle energies. And I've got this book, Science and Human Transformation, that he did by him. And I was just looking through this. I just came across an interesting little equation that he had, and it was expressing consciousness in terms of a signal with noise, coherence, number of channels, frequency, and he was expressing all these various variables that he said were formulation of consciousness. Well, I don't know. I haven't actually picked this book up for a little while, but there are there are many models for where information is stored naturally in the universe. They think it's stored on the interior, on the exterior of a black hole, don't they? They think there's.
Yeah, I saw that one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, they're trying to get at the counter space, and what I, of course, was writing about in the new Threefold Sciences paper, which is getting closer, but it's still only halfway, folks. I'm sorry. It's getting closer, though. I'm almost to part 2. But I was talking about the law of conservation, or what I call the vault, and a lot of people, they like to call the Akashic record, but they specifically mean events, and I specifically mean all information. So, okay, so from there, you were talking about the storage of this data.
Yeah, and so it's obviously stored somehow in a field. We can access it somehow.
How are you defining a field? Because I know how I'm defining a field, but how are you defining a field?
Let's say the field.
Do you want to hear my definition?
It's the medium. It's the medium by which that form of energy can be transmitted or localized, possibly.
Okay.
Go on, but I'd like to hear your definition. I haven't really defined
I
it.
define it as I define it as a relationship, and so this gives a strong mytho-historical fabric to it, and that's in the new threefold science paper, which you have access to. You can actually do a quick search on that, but also it gives it ties the law of relativity to the law of polarity, which I would love to hear your reaction to page 70, but. Anyways, the concept of the field being that you inherently need two things in order to have a relationship. In the case of an electric field being only a particle and it's kind of spreading out, I would have to ask the physicists who came up with that. Well, where's it going? Like, where are these lines that don't exist? Where are they going? But I would say that the ether itself becomes the polarity with the charge. So I don't think you escape the law of polarity. And so I define a field as a relationship.
Yeah. I mean, I would say so as well. And I'm very interested in these chromatic relationships that our solar system forms. And I'd like to find out what information is contained therein. I mean, just for example, Poincaré's cross section of the orbits of the moons of Jupiter. It's fascinating, and because it shows which are the gravitationally stable bands and which aren't. And if you can find out which bit you're in, you can predict which bit you're going to with an amount of confidence, not with complete total confidence, obviously. Because there's an element of uncertainty, but so all these the interaction of all these fields produces information that somehow we use to create a picture of what's happening. I suppose we've all got a slightly different picture, but you know, the more we can express our own picture, there becomes a coherence in thought among between a number of minds. It becomes a clearer picture if there is a concordance. You know, if you can see. If you can definitely prove a correlation, a relationship, then other people can see that. And this is the use of maths, because that is the only way that you can really communicate these ideas. Hopefully you haven't made the maths so complex that the idea is lost in what you're trying to express with it. So that is the usefulness of being able to explain things on charts, on graphs, in pie charts. It's just a visualization process, and we've got to help each other visualize a better picture than what we're being presented with. Now, as far as the information of we are very interested to find out what happened in our history, in our prehistory, and this information is we are picking at it and digging little bits out, little bit by little bit. We're finding bits of history that make sense if they're looked at from a different perspective. They don't make sense if they're looked at from our current perspective.